After leaving, everything is possible. The question is, how does this everything actually look like? This is what we're exploring in this podcast. I'm Janina. I lived my safe little life back in Germany some years ago, and ever since, my life has become it's a very colorful explosion. Let's put it like this. It's a wild ride. I truly enjoy it, though I can also honestly say it's not only easy peasy all the time, right? So here in my podcast, Off They Go, Stories of Starting Over Abroad, it's a place where I share a bit of my story, but I also talk to other brave souls that took the leap, that followed their intuition or whatever it was that made them leave their home and try a different path, a step into the unknown. I'm super excited to explore what is coming out of this. Let's dive into today's episode, shall we? And so it begins. A new journey, a podcast journey, the Off They Go podcast journey. I don't really know what's coming out of this. I'm excited. I'm a bit nervous. I never recorded a video like this, or an audio, however you hear it. Wow. This feels big. This feels meaningful. And to be honest, this is what I'm looking for in my life. This is what I feel pulled towards to do things that make me feel alive. I am sitting in an auberge in Montreal, in the beautiful city of Montreal. I don't have a room for myself, so I don't know who is popping into this video. People are walking by. I just hear weird sounds. I have no idea how the audio quality will be in the end. And honestly, it doesn't really matter. It's a pilot. Pilots are here to make experiences. Off they go. Stories of starting over abroad. My little podcast baby. To be honest, it's a project that I considered doing for quite a while. There's the toilet right next to me. It's not the... I like the setting, but I don't really know if it's strategically the best place to sit when recording a podcast when a toilet is just right behind this door. But that's the thing about traveling. That's the thing for me about living. Make it work. Make it an experience. Doesn't have to be perfect. Where do I begin? Maybe I begin with the fact that I don't have a plan, that I don't have, I got myself a paper and I considered writing something on it to have a structure, but all I wrote was, and so it begins. And so it begins with no plan, with no structure, with no guideline, with no backup plan, because that's how I roll at the moment, or I guess this is how I live now. It's been quite a ride. I left I always call it safe little life, like this life. I had a job, I had a 9-to-5 job, had a flat, had a social life, had a workout routine, had a community. I had all of that in Munich. I loved it until I kind of grew out of it, I guess. And I felt called to try something different, but I also didn't really know what it was. So eventually, I will not, I will, I will not come up with all this, with all the steps that made or that led up to this, but eventually I was on this plane. Eventually I was on this one-way ticket plane on my way to Armenia from Berlin to Warsaw to Yerevan. And I remember sitting at the airport at my stopover in Warsaw. I don't know, how do I say it in English? Warsaw is what we would call it in German. And that was the moment when I realized this is a point of no return. Guess what? I was crying at the airport. I got so emotional on this airplane. I remember recording a short video, and I just realized sitting on a plane with a one-way ticket and having no idea when to come back to your country just hits completely different. And it's a feeling, I mean, I traveled a lot before, but that feeling, I never felt something like that before. This mix of everything is so open, and at the same time everything is so insecure because, oh my God, what is happening? It was a whole mix of feelings. Wow, what a ride since then. So what I like about this journey of mine is that the idea of not making plans and completely being open to whatever it is that calls me, that it led me to the most magical experiences, adventures, places, people that I could ever have dreamt of. And I guess this is like the big why behind this podcast is like, what happens when we actually follow our inner compass, this calling, this knowing, this little voice that is somehow, I guess, I don't know, that might be in all of us. No, I think it is in all of us. We just forgot to listen, or we unlearned to listen. But it's always there. And at some point in my life, I had this feeling, I don't want to wait. I don't want to wait to be super old and then looking back and I'm like, oh, I should have. I don't want to regret. I want to live a life where I don't regret. And that means to take leaps, to take these bold steps. And I'm so thankful for past Janina to actually go for it. In my case, this little voice, and actually this voice was there since I was 22. Yeah. No, I think this voice has always been there. This voice was like, let's explore, let's find out how it is to live in another country. I remember I was 22 and I wrote down like, how I want to live abroad again. But what I thought was, well, I need to find this job. I need to have this job that allows me to travel. Or later on this journey, like in my story, or the story that I told myself was, oh, I could travel, but I need a partner for that. That was a story that I told myself for a long, long time. Because I thought I couldn't do it on my own. Because the risk felt too big. Not because I was not confident traveling by myself, because I did my first big trip when I was 22. I traveled through Central America and I looked like a baby. I had a great time. But this baby me was traveling by herself. So that was not the thing that I was like afraid of traveling by myself. But I guess what happened is that this little voice, this inner knowing, this like, you want to explore something else, was there, but my head made up stories why I couldn't do it. And I followed along. I followed along for quite a while. I guess it was like 10, 12 years. I knew that I wanted to live abroad when I was 22. I remember that or maybe 24. I remember I was in this beautiful like seminar in my bachelor's. It was called self-development. It was the first time that I tapped into this like, oh, what do I really want? It was really great. And ever since I checked in with myself, like, what do I want? What do I want? Yeah, at some point I want to live abroad. But again, the story's kicking. I need money. I need a partner. I need a job. I need security. And I'm just so grateful that at some point something took over and what my head said was just not relevant anymore. So fast forward, I boarded this airplane, and ever since my life is not looking the same. And ever since my life has become more dense, more colorful, just more intense in general. It's like I remember I had this quote on my fridge for a while. I wrote it down and I had it there like as kind of affirmation. It's like time is limited, but we can make it more dense. Like I always thought of it like a soup. Like you can have like a watery soup, or you have like this condensed soup. You have the amount of like the bowl is as big as it is, but we can have like a watery soup, or we can have a condensed soup. So at some point I realized I would like to have a condensed soup. I would like to have a soup with, I didn't really think about the soup. This soup metaphor I just made that up. But what I realized New Year's is that is what happened. Like I condensed things. Does that mean that it's always super easy to digest? Well, no. But it warms me in a way that the watery soup never warmed me before. Oh my God, I don't know if these metaphors are really working. So yeah, anyways, maybe that as a little intro, that for me, stepping into the unknown was rewarded tremendously, with opportunities, with inspiring people, with like my whole horizon exploded. I remember hearing this saying that like you are the average of the, I don't know, pick a number, 5 people that you spend most time with. So if you look around, who do you spend your time with? Are these people where you want to be? Do they live a life that you find fascinating? Are you happy? Because I think it's really difficult to be your true self if you're in an environment where you feel small, or where you feel trapped, or really whatever it is that you feel like. So anyways, at some point I kind of grew out of this beautiful life that I had, and to realize that I don't fit anymore was tough. Was a very painful it was a very painful process, to be honest. And I remember I was on my lunch break and it was so intense, and I was like, what am I doing? And I talked to a friend and I told her, like, I don't know, I'm getting crazy. It's just it felt a bit like a part of me was dying, right? Like, it sounds dramatic, but that is what it felt like. So I remember her saying, Janina, this is because you're growing so much. This is like growing pain. I don't know if that is a saying in English, but we have that word in German. And I was like, okay, yeah, that could be. maybe, or I'm just falling apart. I don't know. So now I asked you for some questions. One question that I got is, what is the realization that has inspired you most on the journey? So what happened on this journey? And I mean, I have been on this, I left like 1.5-ish, a bit more years ago, is that it encouraged me to do something that I started before. It led me to leaving my job. And that is following my body more than my head. And that depending on where you are, that might sound weird. But I mean, this saying about the gut feeling, intuition, it just got heightened the more I allowed it to be. The more I paused, the quieter I got, the less plans I made, the more I could tap into that. And it is just like, I don't have words for what happens when I do this. It is, I know there's one, like, I got one question, or like, just share what happens when you're in flow. And I don't even know where to begin, because, and I'm not in flow all the time, but how one thing comes to the other and eventually it all makes sense. It's just, it still blows my mind. I mean, the like, one thing that happened here in Canada that I just think is, these things don't happen. It doesn't make sense. So it was my first week. I was in a nice, like, actually I was where I am right now. I was in this auberge. I started here. I'm back. And I like to work in coffee places, like coffee shops. I study a lot. I'm always doing some things. And I like to do that in beautiful coffee shops. So I have been in many coffee shops in the area. And I did that from my very first week. And on that certain day, I remember I started in one coffee shop. I remember that I took a picture there. I think it said something like, "Good things are starting here," or something like that. I was like, okay, I think there's truth in it. And I went to have lunch in another place, had a lentil soup, super delicious. And then something called me not to go back to the first coffee shop. It's like, no, I would rather go for a walk. And I remember that at that day, I also got an invite to go to the coffee shop that I visited the day before, because the owner was like, hey, why don't you come back? Let's hang out. And that's where the body thing comes in. Like, my body was like, no, I'm not doing that. And that's it. I mean, that's the thing. Like, I'm new in the city. I don't know anyone. Someone invites me over, but I follow my intuition. Like, I was a nice person. We had a nice conversation. But something was like, nah, let's go somewhere else. So I declined. However, I went to another coffee shop and I worked there. I watched a YouTube video. This YouTube video was about entrepreneurship. And I wanted to watch this video in my hostel here in this auberge. But YouTube is blocked here. So I couldn't watch it here. All right. So I went to this coffee shop, started watching it, and I took some notes. My mentor there, he recommended a book, an author and his book. So I checked if this book is available here in the library. It was. So I was confident. I said, okay, I'll go to the library next day. And I was just writing down, like, okay, it's super important to hire mentors. It's important to surround yourself with people who, like, are where you want to be, right? Like, whatever that is, that can apply to business, but can also apply to, I don't know, sports, like whatever lifestyle you want to live. Because it's easier to adapt when you are surrounded by people, like-minded people. So I will never forget this moment. I sit there, write this in my notebook, And a man approached me and asked me if he could join my table. It was quite busy and I had a huge table. It's like, yeah, of course. Didn't think of anything and went back to my video and just saw like you have this, like this was what I was looking at, but I could see that he pulled out his laptop and a book. And it was not any book. It was actually the book, like it was a book of the author that I just looked up. So I saw this and I was like, I just had to laugh because it just, I mean, how hilarious is this? I mean, this manifestation thing really seems to work. Like that was delivered quickly. So I had to laugh. We ended up in a conversation and like, it's a beautiful person. So it's really like, I'm so, I don't know. It doesn't make sense. It doesn't make sense that these things happen, but they do happen, but they only happen to me when I follow this instinct. So what my journey did to me was encourage me again and again and again and again to actually follow that, however you want to call it, intuition, these little signs, this like, I don't know. So that would be my answer to that. It's just, it's so wild. It's so wild. And you never know what like one small piece, like where this leads to afterwards. I mean, who knows? Who knows? That's it. That's how I wrap this first episode. Wow. This is exciting. Yeah, I'd love to hear your thoughts. I'd love to please let me know if you listen to this point. And I mean, I stick with this thing with not making plans. Let's see what comes next. Let's see. I'd be happy to have you with me on this journey. And it's not on, I mean, this is not my journey, right? Like what I want to do is give room for all these beautiful journeys that I learned about in these past years. Like all these inspiring people. Like there's so much inspiration out there. And I'd love to share a bit of this and to give the stage to build a stage for stories that make us remember that there's so much beauty in this world, in all the chaos, and that this can both exist. It can be tough and unjust and horrible, and there's still beauty in the same moment. And the moment that we tap into this beauty and accept that both exist, I think this is a skill that will be incredibly valuable in our lives. So let's see.